All right, well, it's 3 o'clock, guys. We're going to jump right in. I'd like to start by introducing myself. My name is Scott, and I'll be hosting today's webinar, which will hopefully be the first of many from Overpass.com. So let's take a minute to go over some of the ground rules of the webinar. Although I can't see you or hear you, I know that you're there. So you can use the chat function at the bottom anytime during the webinar to send over any comments or questions. I'm going to be joined today by James and Jada from Overpass.com, who will help field those questions or comments to be used during the Q&A at the end of the webinar. James and Jada are also here to make sure I don't babble too much, like I said earlier. Almost like the music function at the Academy Awards. If you hear that music, that means I'm talking too much. So let me tell you a little bit about me. I've been in sales for the past 30 years or so, and I've been training salesmen for 20 of them. I've trained home salesmen, retail, wholesale, telemarketers in all kinds of industries, residential, business, even commercial. And one of my favorite people to train are telemarketers. And the reason I like telemarketers so much is because when you sell over the phone, you're starting on an even plane. There's no advantage to the way you dress or the way you look, almost like the TV show The Voice, where they can't see you when they sing. It's all about your skill and your ability on the phone. So let's jump right in. Today's webinar is all about getting past the gatekeeper. Whether the purpose of your call is to seek information, generate a qualified lead, set an appointment, open a sale, or close the deal, 85% of the time you'll have to deal with a gatekeeper. Now, the term the gatekeeper is exactly what it sounds like. It's a person or an obstacle that stops you from getting to the boss or the decision maker. Now, it's important to remember the gatekeeper and you have a lot in common. The biggest commonality is that both of you have a job to do. But unfortunately, their job is to not let you get what you need by getting to the boss or the decision maker. So one of the things that I like to do, which I've done most of my career, is almost make it like a contest. Who's going to win the sale? Are they going to sell you on why you shouldn't speak to the boss? Or are you going to sell them on why you need to speak to the boss and give them your pitch? Keep in mind, like any contest, the person who has the more skills or tools going in will always find a way to win. The more information that you compile about the lead you're going to call before you call will give you that upper hand. So it's important for the clients dealing with their contractors to make sure that you give them as much information as you can. It's great to have the CEO's name, the locations, not just the name of a business and a phone number. The better prepared your contractor is, the easier it will be to get past the gatekeeper. Now, let's talk about the three most common types of gatekeepers. The first is your automated gatekeeper. This is your non-human gatekeeper. Not a lot you can do with a machine, right? So there's two types. There's when you make the call and it goes directly to voicemail, and I'm sure you guys have had plenty of times where that's happened. You dial a number and it goes, please leave a message. When that happens, what I like to say is give the message and make it vaguely specific. I know that sounds like a little big, vaguely specific. But what that means is you give them specific information on what you want to give them without giving them too much. Your name, the company you work for, a callback number, even the best time to call you back, and try and make it seem important on the phone because you want them to hear the message and call you back. Now, the second kind is the automated directory option, and we've all had that before, right? Press 1, press 2, please enter the extension of the party you're trying to reach, or a directory example of the parties you're trying to reach. A lot of times with the directory option, you're getting set up because if you don't know who you're trying to reach, they're trying to stop you right at the gate. The easiest way to do that is I find that most of the time, if you don't hit any option, a receptionist or somebody will pick up the phone. If not, just try and get to anybody on the phone and then shop for information, right? So if you get somebody on the phone, hi, this is Jennifer. I'm from sales. How can I help you? hi, Jen, I was trying to reach the CEO. I don't remember what his extension is. Do you think maybe you could send me over to him or just tell me what that extension is and I'll call back and put it in? Make it seem like you've called before and you've forgotten or you're just not sure, because sometimes that person will just shut you down as well. Now, that brings us to the next type of gatekeeper, the receptionist. A company receptionist is usually fielding so many calls and doing so many things during the course of the day that all they're looking to do is get you off the phone as quick as possible, right? Right away, you'll hear it in their voice. You'll sense their frustration. It's going to be a fast-paced conversation, but basically the receptionist will be like, what do you want? What do you want? That's when you have to slow down the conversation and try and be like, oh, hey, my name is Scott. I'm calling from Overpass.com. How's your day going so far? Or one of the things I used to do as a telemarketer, which I always thought was cute, was when they answer the phone, I go, please don't hang up. I'm not a machine. Because how many automated calls are they getting during the course of the day? So you need to get this receptionist on your side. And the easiest way to do that is just make sure you're making that connection and engaging with the receptionist.
Overworked.
Right. So that's what James is here for. James is here to remind me of the things I said that I forget I say. You always remember the receptionist is always going to be overworked, but underappreciated. That is a great way to get in there. Oh, I know, Jennifer, you must be so busy today. And the last thing you want to do is be bothered by somebody that doesn't think like it's going to help you. Why don't you just put me through? Or even better, we're going to get into the next gatekeeper, which is the executive assistant. Sometimes you can even try and get that information. Jennifer, is there any way that you could put me through to the boss? Or do I have to go through somebody else to get to the boss? Because then what you're doing is you're getting Jennifer off the hook. She no longer has to listen. Hey, listen, Jen, if you want, just put me through to the executive assistant. I'll talk to them. You can get back to your work or get back to what you're doing. You've just now made a friend. And always remember that if you have to call back, Jennifer, is there a direct line I can call you back directly? You were such a pleasure to deal with. All right? There's no reason why you can't make friends with that gatekeeper. Now, getting into the third gatekeeper, which is the executive assistant, that gatekeeper is just a little bit tougher. Why? Because they're hired to directly manage for the CEO or the boss. Their job is to make sure that nobody bothers their boss, as opposed to the receptionist, which is being receptive for everybody in the company. The executive assistant is just being receptive for the boss. And ideally, this person is going to have as much information as they need to open the door for you, but keep in mind, you do not want to pitch the executive assistant because they don't have the authority to make any of those decisions. So you want to get them excited about getting you to the boss. Just think about that for a second when you're dealing with an executive assistant. How important do you think it would be for them to make sure that they get something great for their boss? So what better way than to get them excited about what you're selling without telling them too much information? I always say in sales, one of the best things is when you convince somebody whatever they're buying, that it was their decision to buy it. I'll repeat that again. Getting somebody to believe that it's their decision, even though you're the one that put it in their head, is key when they pass you off to the decision maker. So going right into that, let's talk about how we approach the gatekeeper. The beginning of every call should always be the same. You want to build rapport with that gatekeeper, whether it be the executive assistant, whether it be the receptionist. Building that rapport is key. Never, ever go right into your pitch. Going into your pitch, all that does is create a defense mechanism with the gatekeeper, because all they're seeing is a telemarketer. You haven't had the opportunity to humanize yourself yet. So usually what I would say is, hi, I'm Scott from Overpass.com. how's your day going so far? Now, you might get somebody that says, you don't really care how my day is going so far. And you go, of course I do. Otherwise, I wouldn't have asked. Now, if you have the information from your client, what the location is, you know, who the CEO is, even if you know the CEO's name, don't throw it out there right away. Try and make that connection with the gatekeeper first. Hi, I'm Scott. I'm from Overpass. Oh, I see you here in Chicago. I'm in Chicago. Or I see you're in Chicago. How's the weather? I'm right here in New York. You know, it's been raining for 3 days. Get that gatekeeper to talk about anything other than why you're on the phone. Once you do that and get them involved, it'll be that much easier to move forward. And believe it or not, if you know the CEO's name and you say it after you've already engaged, then the gatekeeper believes that you were really legitimately engaged, right? If you turn around after you've asked those questions and say, oh, by the way, is Mr. McMahon available? I tried reaching him the other day and I couldn't get through. And all of a sudden now, in their mind, you could have asked for him right away, but you didn't. You took a minute and you've engaged with them. This way, they're more likely to push you through. Now, when you're doing this, it's important to always remember that you want to keep a steady level tone. All right, because you have to seem as if you know exactly what you're doing and what you're trying to get through. Now, that will bring us to our next segment, which is the objection cycle. Now, what is the objection cycle? Well, in the rare case, the gatekeeper lets you speak to the decision maker just by you asking, get yourself ready for the sale. Great job. But let's be realistic. That's not going to happen. Most of the time, they're going to want to know exactly what you're doing or exactly what you're selling or exactly why you need to call. Well, now it's time for the whole back and forth process of the objection handling. First rule is to not get upset about objections. And why don't we get upset? Because what did we say? We said it's their job to make sure that you don't get a chance to speak to their boss. So you can't get upset because they're just doing their job, just like you're just doing your job. So, and you always have to remember that when you get upset, and I want you to think about this even in your personal life, when you get upset, can't you tell it through your tone? You can hear it in your voice. And the people around you will notice it. They will hear it. It'll create a defense mechanism with the gatekeeper. And then guess what? You're not getting through. Now, the second rule of the objection handling process is agreeing and understanding. Now, let me explain what we mean by agreeing and understanding. It is so important to listen intently to what the gatekeeper is saying to you so that you can turn any objection around. But when you agree and understand, it doesn't necessarily mean you agree and understand. You might not believe what the gatekeeper has to say, but it doesn't matter because they've said it. So if you don't agree and understand, remember that you will never get back on the phone with that gatekeeper again. Here's a thing we always say in sales. Listening twice as much as you talk is a golden rule in sales. By doing this, the gatekeeper believes that you care about what it is they're talking about and that you're engaged in whatever their objection would be. Use that to your advantage. This will give you a chance to use what we call the turnaround method, which simply means taking whatever the gatekeeper said and turning it around to get your desired result. Please remember that closing down an objection does not mean that you're closing the deal. It might make you one step closer to getting to the deal, but just because you've gotten past that objection or obstacle with the gatekeeper, don't pat yourself on the back and ask where to send the invoice to. That doesn't mean you sold anything yet, because you still have to prepare yourself for the actual sale with the CEO or the decision maker. Now, keep in mind that there are common objections and solutions. Hold on one sec. Oh, there we go. So what are some of the most common objections? So let's go over the easy ones, right? The decision maker or the owner is not there. Obviously, there's nothing you can do with this objection except make the follow-up and make it important. So here's an example. Man, I can't believe I keep missing him or her. Do you think we can nail down an appointment time so I don't have to keep bothering you? I have 3 o'clock today available or 2 o'clock tomorrow available. Now, why would you do that? You don't want to write a blank check to the gatekeeper. You don't want to give them the opportunity to push you so far away that you don't even remember calling the company. It's always good to nail that down. Now, of course, the gatekeeper might turn around and say, oh, both those days are no good. So then you just push the following day. Today's Wednesday. So, 2 o'clock today or 3 o'clock tomorrow? Oh, wow, none of those times are available? Well, how about 1 o'clock on Friday? I really, really want to get to him sooner than later with this amazing opportunity that the company has. Show that it's important. Show that you believe in it. A lot of people don't realize this in sales, but building value in the company by showing how excited you are about what you're doing is major, major key with both the gatekeeper and the actual CEO. If the gatekeeper believes that you are sincere in what you are offering, they're more likely to send you through, as opposed to whether or not you're selling a pet rock. Now, the decision maker on the other line is busy. You know, that's one of the other objections. What if they turn around and say, oh, my boss is on the other line or he's too busy? I understand. That's when you turn to the gatekeeper and you acknowledge the gatekeeper's value. I completely understand. I don't want to keep you then. You must be so busy. When would be a better time I can call back later on today? This way, when I call you, you could just put me right through and we don't have to go through this again. It's a way of you being authoritative without being arrogant. And that's a very, very important sales trait, because you want to show that you're confident, but you don't want to make them less valuable than you. Now, the biggest obstacle in the objection cycle is when the gatekeeper wants to keep the decision maker, wants to be the decision maker. Now, I wrote this down as a little note to myself. I don't know how often you might have had dealings with this, but you might get a gatekeeper that wants to hear the entire pitch. They want to hear the cost. They want to hear everything because they're going to go to their boss and then they're going to pitch it. Always remember, they will never do your pitch better than you will do your pitch. You are the trained salesperson. But like we talked about earlier, you cannot diminish their value. If you diminish their value by being like, oh, well, you're not going to understand. It's better if I speak to them. The best way to do that is, listen, I can completely go through everything with you if you really want me to. But if you're going to try and sell it for me, I'm afraid that you might forget something or something that's really important, and I don't want him to miss out on anything. So maybe we could do something where, since you're his executive assistant, I could speak to him with you there so you could hear it as well. And this way, that might even work better for me, because then you can give some advice or some of your opinions as well. This way, you're not actually pitching the gatekeeper before getting the CEO or the boss around, available for the pitch. Now, this one is my personal favorite. And there's a little veer off to this topic, and you'll understand why when we get to it. When the gatekeeper asks how much money it's going to cost the company or their boss, never get into a money conversation with the gatekeeper. The reason being is because a real gatekeeper is not going to care about what it costs the company. Usually, and this is the veer off I was talking about, usually if you get a gatekeeper that asks you the price, it's probably because they're the boss. And it's important that you remember that. Now, let's be honest, for everybody out there, I would tell you to raise your hands, but I couldn't see it anyway. But you could say it in the comments section or the chat section. How many times you get a telemarketer call you, and when they call you and they ask you and they go, hi, can I speak to Scott? You turn around and go, oh, I'm sorry, Scott's not here right now. Is there something I can help you with? When you know it's you, but that's your way of avoiding the telemarketer. Well, if you're going to do that, what makes you think somebody else is not going to do that? So that's one of the trick questions to know when it's a boss, because a boss will always want to know how much it's going to cost them. A gatekeeper is not going to care.
Fun little note. One of our viewers, Raya,
Right?
just let us know that you can actually raise hands. So
You know what? And I did see that. I saw it said raised hands. And I thought to myself, that's great. It would have been nice if I would have known that before I said.
so thank
Not
you so
know.
much, Raya.
Yes, Raya. Thank you very much. So always remember that. Now that'll give us a little side conversation about trying to establish actually how important that gatekeeper is as well. It's important to listen to little cues and notes. And I'm sorry if I keep turning because I'm looking at myself as opposed to looking at the camera. So if it looks like it's weird, but so the gatekeeper might have more value. Like the gatekeeper could be potentially the vice president of the company because the company might only have 2 or 3 people. Listen to the things that the gatekeeper says. Going right back to what we said, listening twice as much as speaking. All right? Let the gatekeeper talk. Keep a pad next to you. Jot down information. Jot down little notes. It's always important, especially, and I meant to say this when we engage the gatekeeper, it's always important to always go back to information they might have given you. Oh, like they might have turned around and said something about the kid's last day of school. You might be able to use that later on. Oh, listen, Jen, like you were saying about your kids and their last day of school coming home on the bus, I have to be home also to meet my kids at 4. So is there any way I can call your boss at 3? Get back in that engagement part. Now, another objection is when the gatekeeper will turn around and tell you that the company doesn't want what you're selling. Now, think about this for a second. You haven't even pitched them yet. They don't know what you're selling. Overpass could be anything, right? But they're going to tell you that they're not interested. Well, how do you get past that objection? It's not easy. But if you've engaged and you've connected with the gatekeeper, you find yourself getting a little more comfortable on the phone. And that's when you could turn around and be like, well, Jen, I haven't even really told you what I'm selling. I guess that's your job to tell me that you're not interested, but how do you really know you're not interested? Now, I'm going to teach something to the salespeople, and I'm going to not use any kind of vulgar language, but I always used to say, if you're good in sales, I used to say I could sell salt to a slug and make him buy it in bulk for his family. But you couldn't sell gold for $1 if you don't know how to handle the sale properly. And that's kind of the same situation when the gatekeeper will turn around and tell you they're not interested in what you're selling. That's when you have to be like, well, how do you know you're not interested in what I'm selling? And then you can be like, listen, Jen, let's be honest. You know, is it that because you're just told by your boss not to let me on the phone? I don't know. And then, and just kind of keep talking until you can get through. I have Scott raised his hand. Is everything all right? I keep moving. I'm shifting.
We're hearing from the room. You might be just a bit close. So
Oh, I'm sorry.
Oh, no.
That'd be funny. It's like one of those movies, and I can't remember the movie, where the old couple they're Skyping and they don't know, and they put the camera right by their nose. And they're like, can you see me? And I'm like, okay. So make sure that you use all of the tools in your arsenal when it comes down. Now, this is also a key sales technique, and we're going to get into this briefly, but changing your approach. You have to learn to be flexible in sales. Flexibility is key and important in any kind of sales technique. Although you are going to hear the same objections over and over and over again, it's important to remember that it's not always the same responses. Because what would make it different if it's the same question? If 10 and this is a trick, so if somebody wants to answer. If 10 gatekeepers gave you the same answer and said, I'm sorry, my boss is on the other line right now, what would make you come up with 10 different answers if it's the same objection? The answer to the question is, it's 10 different gatekeepers, guys. Every gatekeeper has its own personality, right? So even though you might hear the same objection over and over, your response might not work with the same gatekeeper, with different gatekeepers. And that's why you'll have to learn how to change your approach and adjust your approach. You're going to get some no-nonsense gatekeepers. Tell me what you want. Tell me what you want. And if you don't feel you can engage those gatekeepers, the best thing to do is, listen, I'm sorry to bother you. You sound terribly busy. I'll give you a call back another time. Because you're not sure if that's that particular gatekeeper, that's that receptionist, or maybe you can get through to somebody else. But it's always important to remember that you need to be willing and able to change your approach based on how you feel or assess the personality of the gatekeeper you're dealing with. So at this point, I think we've pretty much covered everything within that curriculum. James, Jada, did I miss anything?
I
think James fell asleep. No, James?
No, yeah, I think the only thing was in the changing the approach, you were saying there's 10 different gatekeepers. The only thing you can really do right there is from your listening intently is try and pull back to what you've heard.
Right.
And gear that approach based,
That is right. And I apologize, James, because that's what I was trying to say when I was saying there were 10 different gatekeepers. It's always so 10 different gatekeepers, 10 different personalities, but guess what? After you're done speaking to 1,000 people, you're going to keep hearing those personalities over and over again. The idea is to make sure that you've established those personalities, whether you take them in notes. What I used to do when I was in sales, I would make an objection sheet. I would even go and make an objection book with dividers. And this way I would have my book handy and I would go, oh, it's my boss isn't here objection. And I would turn to that page. And then there would be different responses that I had used in the past that helped me get past those gatekeepers. The other part about that with the changing approach is you always have to remember that no matter what the gatekeeper says, keep it professional. Don't get upset. Don't get angry. They're doing their job. You're doing your job. And like I said, there's 2 sales made at every call. Either they sold you on why you're not going to get their boss on the phone, or you've sold them, and guess what? Now you're at the client and you're making the sale. All righty. Now I think we're going to turn it over to some Q&A if we're ready for that.
The Q&A was actually asked in the chat. So,
I have to go to that, right?
Yeah, we have Oliver, and they asked if we were to find that it was the owner, how do we approach that? She feels like directly asking them is a bit of a problem. It's a bit too forward. So if we do feel that it might be the owner, what are ways that we can engage them and try and mine that information?
Okay. So what I would normally do, and you get this through experience, if you believe that you've got the owner on the phone, I will retract my last statement about not pitching the gatekeeper, because you're supposed to pitch the owner. Now, let's make believe you're wrong. You've lost nothing. The gatekeeper wasn't letting you through. You gave him half the pitch. You gave him the sales technique. Whatever you did, you didn't lose anything by doing that except potentially time. But if it is the actual owner and you're showing that owner that you're respecting his company enough that you're willing to talk about what your product and sale is, the trick, what I would do is I would make it seem like you want that person to pass on that information, right? And make it seem as how amazing the pitch could be. Like, oh, so let's make believe Jennifer's the owner, but she's claiming she's not at the time. Well, you know what, Jen? Maybe if you wouldn't mind and you have a few minutes, I can just kind of give you like the basis of what this is about. And then you could pass that on to the owner. This way I can get a better time and you could set me up with a better call. Or maybe if you want, we can even, leave a voicemail, or what you're trying to do is you don't want to let the boss know that it's the boss, because they've already lied to you about being the boss, right? And the reason I say that is because I've done that in the past, where I said Scott wasn't here, and then 10 minutes later when the person called me back, I go, "Hi, this is Scott," because people don't recognize the voices on the phone. So you pitch it a little to get the person interested, and then say, "Listen, I don't want to give you too much information. When's the best time that I can call back and speak to the boss?" If the boss is a little bit interested, they'll give you a time to call back. And that is the perfect time for that. Any other questions? I got this little box in the screen that says Q&A, and I don't know how to put it down.
We have a new one from Harley. The question is, what do we do with those who pick up the call and listen to the whole pitch and eventually go straight for what's the price question? She says she tends not to talk about prices, but some people just try to get rid of you once you refuse to tell the price.
Okay. So the catch with that is, I call it a 3-step process, but that part of the process is building value in your pitch. If you build the right value in your pitch, they won't want to know what the price is until it's time to buy. Okay? If you've skated around the pitch, or you haven't really sold or explained what you're selling, a lot of times they'll do that because that's their way out. Somebody that's legitimately interested in what you're selling won't worry so much about the price until they've heard the whole pitch.
I will bring a small aside to that, which is, maybe you're in a competitive market. Maybe they've tried a competitor of yours.
Okay.
And I think price in that moment would be, rather than speaking directly to your cost, maybe speaking to the competitive market as a whole. Say like, yeah, our price is really competitive. I don't know if you've tried company A or company B, but we are,
right. Okay. So James brought up a very good point. In a competitive market, and I can tell you that I've had a lot of experience in these competitive markets, particularly with shop at home, the shop at home industry. And what happens is, when you're in that shop at home industry, people have always heard that you're competitive and you have the same price. The trick here is, if you've gotten through your approach, then it doesn't really matter when it speaks to the price, because at that point you've gotten through your pitch. That's all that's left. But you want to make sure, like what James just said, you want to make sure you let the customer know. And the best way to do that is, listen, if you wouldn't mind, just let me finish getting through explaining everything to you. A lot of times, if I give you the price prior, before I've had an opportunity to explain the whole product, it might not seem as if we're competitively priced. It's important that I do that. This way we don't veer away, and you don't start saying, well, this guy only charges this, but I haven't had a chance to finish telling you what it is. So that's the way you usually would do that. And for the most time, when people are interested, they will stop and allow you to finish. Now, let's just make believe, and I'm just going to pick an industry at random, but I think Rhea was home health services, and let's say we're selling, home health care. And the average home health care rate makes between 19 and 22 an hour, but the company you're selling for is 23 an hour. That's when you turn around, and as long as you have built the value in what your company offers, and make sure that you let them know that their pricing is competitive, you're going to turn around. They're not going to ask you, well, what's the hourly rate? That's when you would be like, well, it depends on what you need, or it depends how long it's for. And that's how you avoid the pricing question, by asking them more questions that you'll need the answers to get to the prices. And I hope that kind of makes sense. It's almost like saying, how much is the car? Well, I don't know. Does your car want GPS? Does it want a sunroof? Does it want special rims? Because like everything else, I can give you the basic price, but is the basic price what you need? And and she said, who's that said that? Oliver Pearson. That's right. Depending on the industry, where he wrote on the bottom about how you're tailoring the price based on the product, right? And it's no different than anything like, oh, I have the gold package, the silver package, the platinum package. I can't give you a price, sir, because I'm not sure exactly what you're having yet or what you need yet or what best fits your company. And that's also key, guys. Make sure it's all about them. It goes right back to what we were talking about with the sale. You want to make sure that you've convinced them that they've convinced you on what they want. Sir, what it is exactly that your company needs right now. Let's get you what you need, and then we'll worry about the price.
I think that was great. We have Angel, and they asked, sometimes they're dialing out to a client's personal number, like a cell phone.
Right.
Whether it be intentional or unintentional, some might be bothered by that. So what's a simple way to address the person you're calling's concern and get on with your pitch?
All right. So if it's the boss that you're calling and you're dialing into his personal number, one of my little tidbits that I used to do is like, oh, because they'll answer the phone and go, you'll say, hi, I'm looking for Mr. McMahon. And they go, what do you want? Why are you calling me on my cell? And you turn around and go, whoa, Mr. McMahon, I'm so sorry. I had gotten this qualified lead across my desk about your company might be potentially interested in what my services are. And this is the number they gave me. Would you rather me call you back at the office and give them a specific time? Don't give them an open ending. Or if you have 3 minutes, I can maybe talk to you about it right now, and then we can take it from there. Most of the time, if you're apologetic and the guy is not a tool, they'll like, oh, okay, because you must have gotten their number from somewhere. And a lot of people think like, where'd you get my number? Sir, it must have came up in somehow an interested qualified lead. All I know is it came across my desk that this is the company, this is your name, and this is the number I have. I'm sorry if I'm interrupting you at a bad time right now. Maybe there's something we can do. Maybe I can make a better time. Or if you have 2 minutes, I can promise I can get through, and then I'll tell you what, if you don't want to talk to me after that, we don't have to talk after that. All right? You got to remember, guys, in telemarketing, it's a numbers game, right? So you want to try and get through these gatekeepers or get these CEOs on the phone, but you also have to recognize when you're wasting your time. All right? And that's going to completely be on you. I've had guys I've trained that never hang up, never walk away from a sale. They wait until the actual person hangs up the phone. They never say goodbye. They're like, oh, there's a dial tone, guess time to call somebody else. But that's all tailored to basically how you want to handle the sale. And that always comes down to you. And again, that could be another whole webinar where we talk about how you get motivated for sales, how to generally talk to people on the phone, but that's for another time. Any other questions? James, Jada.
Well, Oliver asked the question, but it was sort of answered.
Okay.
They get pretty far in their pitch, and then they'll be pretty far along, and they'll say, well, how did you get my number? And there was something that you were saying where you're saying, oh, I got this qualified lead. I think that sometimes when you hear, I got this qualified lead, you feel like you were just delivered on some list to someone.
Right.
And you never want to just be delivered on some list. So what's maybe a solid way to...
All right. So it's good that you brought that up, James. So now I want you guys to listen to what James said, but understand why I said qualified lead. A lot of telemarketers will turn around and say, I got your name off a list. That is horrible. When I say qualified lead, if you want to embellish on that, when you get the client on the phone and go, well, sir, I got this qualified lead from our lead source as to show that your company was interested in our services. And when I use the word qualified, to me, qualified means, oh, it wasn't just some random name, or it wasn't just some random list that the name came off of. And there are some other words you could turn around and say, oh, sir, well, we have this specialized list that came through specifically for companies in your industry that are interested in our service. And your company was one of those companies that came up on the list. Are you not interested in these services, or do you not need these services? Because I was always, because companies in your industry always need home health care, or are always looking for whatever other industries you guys are in, telecommunications or new telecommunication systems, or anything that you could think of. When you relate to the idea that the company itself showed interest, or companies in their industry were compiled that showed interest, it at least points out to them that there was some research done. It wasn't just some random phone book. Like, oh yeah, I got your number out of the phone book. Not that anybody has phone books anymore, but I hope that answered the question for that one.
Okay, so we have 2 more questions I think that we'll do before we wrap up.
Okay.
This one's from Angel.
Hi, Angel.
And it's when you hit the voicemail. So you hit an automated gatekeeper.
Okay.
And they'd like to see a couple examples of positive ways to leave the voicemail to ensure you get a call back.
Okay. So I'm going to let you know, Angel, that as positive as any of your voicemails are, nothing will guarantee a callback. All right? Because you always have to remember that with the voicemails, they could be getting 100 voicemails, and by the time they get to yours, you might be in a similar situation where they're just like, oh, I don't want to be bothered. What I like to do is so you talk about positive ways. To me, it's all about tone when you're dealing with these. Believe it or not, not as much information as it does with tone, right? You don't want to sound automated yourself, all right? There are services out there where they just have these automated answers where it's just, you can hear that it's not a person. What I like to do is go, so let's make believe we know the gentleman's name. His name is Mr. McMahon. Hi, Mr. McMahon. My name is Scott. I'm calling from Overpass.com today. I just wanted to reach out to you. There was some interest shown from your company and companies in your industry. Please give me a call at blah, 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 as soon as you can, so that we can discuss some of these services that can help your company. That could be one way to do it. The other way, it could be very vague. Hi, this is Scott from Overpass.com. I was hoping that I can get a call back with a better time to either reach you, or just call my number directly at blah, 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 and do it that way. You can even say, make it personal. You can, hi, this is Scott at Overpass. My number is so-and-so, so-and-so. That's my direct line. I would really appreciate if you give me a call back as soon as you can, so we can discuss what your interest was in the services that we're offering. Almost make it seem like in these bigger companies that he might have expressed some kind of interest and don't even remember it. Hi, I'm just or whether you guys, and this depends on comfortability. Hi, this is Scott from Overpass. I'm just returning your call. You reached out. Here's my direct line. Give me a call back when you're ready. He might hang up and go, when did I call him? I must have called him the other day. There's 1,000 ways to leave voicemails. And believe it or not, a lot of them are industry specific. Business to business, no better way on a business to business lead than make it seem like they've already reached out to you, because they're looking for stuff on business to business. How many times you go on the computer, click this, click that, hit a landing page, want to find that information? So play the game. Yeah, hi, this is Scott from Overpass. I'm sorry I missed you again. I know this phone tag is getting funny. Give me a call back when you get a chance. Half the time, I know me at my age, I'm always like, damn, I called this guy. I better call him back. You can do that. Next question.
Okay, so this is going to be the last question.
And I hope that answered.
From Arlie Aguilera.
Any relation to Christina?
What do we do with those prospects who seem interested and maybe book an appointment, set a meeting time, but they never show up?
That's me. I'm the worst.
How can we tell that they accepted to book the appointment because they were interested, or as a way to just get rid of it?
All right. So the way you tell that is time. Time is key. if a customer is really interested and they really want what you're selling, they won't put you off. Okay. So as an example, you go into Costco or BJ's and they got the home improvement guys and they're like, hey, would you like to change your windows? And you're like, sure I would. And you're like, okay, whatever. And then you take their information and you throw it on the floor, right? It's similar to when you're on the phone with the customer. You don't allow the customer to walk away. My question to you is this, and for most salespeople that are out there, is anybody in an industry that can't close the deal if I picked up the phone and told you I was ready to buy? Right? So think about that. If you can close the deal on the spot and the person is pushing you off, there's a 50-50 chance of pushing you off because they're not interested. Now, if you're in an industry where you have to set an appointment or you have to set a time, there's nothing you really can do about that or no, because if that customer is setting the time and the appointment, you have to believe that they legitimately want that appointment. The only real indicator for that is if you haven't gone through the pitch and they're willing to make an appointment, right? So if you get on the phone and you're like, hi, this is Scott from Overpass. How are you today? And they go, great, let's set up an appointment. I can't wait to meet you. And you're like, yeah, but you don't know what I'm selling. Obviously, those people are never going to meet you. If you get through your pitch and you've been able to book an appointment or qualify a lead or even get a time for a call back, you got to believe that the sale is a sale. And believe me when I tell you, you want to maintain that in your own mind too, because the more disappointed you get, the more it will reflect on the future calls that you make.
I think it's also important to remember that just because they weren't able to make it to your set time doesn't mean they actually aren't interested. A lot of times people do get busy, they do get wrapped up. Make sure that you have all of the means to contact them, to keep that persistence up, because
well, you know what? And quickly, I forgot, and that's a very good point, James. And this is one of those things where it's good that you remind me. We talk about follow-up. Follow-up is key. Don't be disappointed, like James said, if somebody doesn't pick up the phone at 3 o'clock, if you have a 3 o'clock appointment, they might have been busy, okay? But follow through. And always remember that when you follow through, the follow-through is just as important as the first report. Hi, it's Scott from Overpass. I'm reaching back out to you like you told me to do. It's 3 o'clock. Leave that voicemail, too. You talk about leaving voicemails. Hi, it's 3 o'clock. I'm just calling you back like you asked me to call back at 3. I'm going to try you back again in about a half an hour. Hopefully you can call me back before then. You must be on the other line or busy. Don't get disappointed if they don't. See, and we're talking about generalizing the industries. But, you know, people might put off appointments 2 or 3 times. That doesn't mean they're not interested. Keep trying, keep following through. All right, guys. The one thing we didn't talk about with this whole webinar is how to say goodbye. So, yeah, that wasn't in my notes. So I hope everybody had a great time and learned a little bit. And we're going to have many more of these webinars to come and dive deeper into more information. And thank you again.